Awesome.
Look at this. Wow. Look. I'm glad I took a seat.
All right.
All right, here we go.
Hello. Yeah, I have two questions. Who was your favorite villain to fight?
Okay.
And the second one was, wow, yeah. I'm just going crazy, yeah.
Well, let me answer the first question. The favorite villain to fight, actually there were quite a few I liked fighting. I liked fighting the Riddler. Remember the Riddler, Frank Gorshin? The guy with the question mark? Boy, he gave us a lot of trouble. And then there was the Joker, Cesar Romero. The Penguin, Burgess Meredith. 3 Catwomen, the main one was Julie Newmar. And then we had some pretty exotic ones too. For example, you know who played Egghead? Vincent Price, that's right. And you know who played the Siren? Joan Collins, that's right. So we have a lot of great actors and actresses. In fact, everybody in Hollywood wanted to be on the show. And because there weren't enough villain roles, that's why we created the going up the side of the building and then the window opens. And you had all different kind of people that came out of the window, looked out, asked us questions. That's the only way they could be on the show, was to have that brief moment. So we had a lot of great guest stars. Very good question, thank you. Oh, you thought of the other one now, okay.
What was the best trap that you guys got into that you had to get out of?
Oh, we had horrible traps. I mean, geez, I sawed in half practically by all kinds of things. The one I particularly didn't like was the giant clam. Yeah, I tell you, you don't want to be eaten by a giant clam. Also, there was another one that was the most dangerous one, and believe me, there were a bunch of dangerous ones. The most dangerous one was the one, it was a Catwoman show, and I was tied to a kind of a plank, and I was being dipped down lower, and there were 3 real Bengal tigers. And they, the director and the cameraman were in a steel cage about 6 feet above me, right? So they were safe. And they kept telling the animal handlers, well, can't you make them jump up at them and stuff like that? And I said, they don't need to do that. People understand the danger. And they said, oh no, we gotta have this, we gotta have more graphics. So what they did, the truly happened, they took raw meat and hung it above my head, and they jumped up, and those cats could easily have reached me, but they jumped up towards that meat and looked like they were jumping up at my face. And I'll tell you something, it was really frightening. Yeah. So, okay, good question. Thank you very much. Who's next? Wow, Sally. All right, dear.
Hi, Robin.
Hello.
So we are currently watching all of the Batman on Blu-ray.
Oh, as you should.
As we should.
You have excellent taste, obviously.
And so far, I get a little bit frustrated because I wish that they would have given you so much more meat. You know what I'm saying? Batman always got to do the quick thinking and everything, but it was always you.
Yeah, but I had all the answers.
You came up with all the answers. That was just it. My question is, did you ever really want to do like your own Batusi, but make it like a Robinango, or?
Well, no, at 15 and a half, I was too young for stuff like that, you know. But no, it was suitable because Batman was in that discotheque called What a Way to Go-Go. And he was doing the Batusi with Jill St. John, famous actress at the time. But no, you know, when we filmed this, things were pretty conservative. And so, you know, at 15 and a half, my character was not allowed to go into things like discotheques and stuff like that. Although times have certainly changed, haven't they?
Now, were you 15 and a half when the filming began? Because I had always thought that you were an older character.
Oh, yes, you do. Most people photograph much younger. So I was 20 when I was playing 15 and a half. Okay?
And very interesting, Burt, you've shared this with me before, that along the lines of that question, that we see a lot of kids come up to us and say, you know, I love Batman, but I always wanted to be Robin.
Well, they related to Robin because I think the size. I mean, most kids will, look at Batman, 6'4", and say, well, I'm not Batman, but gee, I could be Robin. I could ride with Batman in the Batmobile. I could climb the walls with Batman. I could do a lot of things. And so a lot of the kids related to Robin because it was easier for them image-wise. Okay, next.
Two-part question. Who is your favorite famous guest star, and what was Bruce Lee like?
Ah, okay. Guest stars, I personally, as a young actor, love working with every one of them. I mean, these were pros. I mean, these were some of the great actors and actresses of all time. And it was a very wonderful experience working with people that you've seen on television. I mean, there was a scene that I did with Vincent Price where Vincent Price as Egghead has my neck, he's got his arm around my neck holding me, and he's breaking eggs over my head, and Batman comes in, they have a little dialogue, and then I escape and we have a fight. Well, when Adam came in as Batman, Adam West came in as Batman, and he was having dialogue with Vincent Price's Egghead, both of them started missing their lines. I mean, they were, who knows why, but they flubbed their line, and we'd have to do it again. But in the meantime, I was getting like 2 and 3 eggs broken on my head before they messed up the lines. So it got to be almost a dozen eggs. I had eggs going down my back and into my underwear and stuff like that. Eggs are very sticky. And so finally, when they got it right, I was supposed to pick up a single egg and throw it at Egghead, but I picked up an entire dozen of eggs. And I hit him so hard on top of that egg on his head that the egg actually bent a little bit. So that answers that question. Bruce Lee was a friend of mine. I knew Bruce Lee before Batman. And I actually used to spar with Bruce Lee. And a piece of trivia for you was that Bruce Lee's first cinematic fight scene when he was on film was fighting me. So I knew him, I knew his wife Linda, I knew Brandon when he was 6 months old, and we used to go down into Chinatown in Los Angeles to have authentic Chinese dinner because Bruce was from Hong Kong. And so it was really, it was very nice. He was very self-assured. We might also call it possibly cocky. But then the man really trained. He trained 8 hours a day, every single day. And he was great. I mean, he really, in fact, how many of you have gone on the internet and seen that ping pong thing where he fights, where he plays ping pong using nunchucks? Anybody seen that? Yeah, pretty impressive, isn't it? Yeah, my goodness. Okay.
You were black belt too.
That's right, that's right. And it was fun. It was sparring with him.
Robin was known for saying a bunch of holy something or other back then. So what was your favorite thing to say?
Well, I had 378 of them. And I'm not sure I had any favorites, but I'll give you one. One of them was, holy strawberries, Batman, are we in a jam?
Hi, I'm a radio personality. I'm also a voice impressionist. I have an aspiring career in voice acting.
Yes.
I wish to thank you and Adam West for inspiring me in this line of work.
Good.
How I speak. I also wish to thank you and the late Casey Kasem for making me a fan of the Dick Grayson version of Robin. My question is about voiceovers and animation.
Right.
When I was growing up, you had the Batman TV show reruns, you had the Batman cartoons by Filmation, and Hanna-Barbera's long-running Super Friends.
Right.
My question to you, my very first exposure to Batman, by round of applause, does anybody remember the Filmation cartoon, The New Adventures of Batman, with a little character called Batmite, who looked like the Domino's Pizza Noid? What are your memories or recollections of recording the cartoon and working with Melindy Britt, Lenny Weinrib, and Filmation founder Lou Scheimer? Who was Batmite?
Yeah, thank you. No, it was a great experience. I mean, it was fun. It was done after Batman, of course. It was kind of like a spoof of Batman. There were a lot of Batman stuff done. In fact, Adam, there was the Hanna-Barbera one I was not on. That's where Casey Kasem was on. But also there was, I don't know if you know this, but there was a character called the Gray Ghost. Did you ever hear about that? And that was done by Adam West. Yeah, and of course, Adam, who is a very dear friend of mine, is Mayor West on Family Guy. He's always asking people to vote for him.
And you have done The Simpsons.
The Simpsons, yeah.
Futurama.
Futurama.
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob.
Barnacle Boy here.
Yes. And most recently, Robot Chicken. It hasn't come out yet. One of these biggies. All right, who's next?
Okay, so I know it must have been hard acting like super big time. So what was it like to be Robin?
Well, you know, it was a lot of fun, but it was also work, you know. Remember, when you watch one of our shows, you're watching something that has been filmed for literally 6 or 8 days, assembled for weeks, fixed in post-production to fix sound, fix picture, and all these things, add music. But when we actually make a show, you make it in little tiny pieces that are sometimes only like 20 seconds or 30 seconds at a time. It might be, gosh, Bruce, you're right. You know, when Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, and then they stop, and then they go take a angle on Bruce Wayne and Adam West, and he says his line. And so when you're doing this, you're really just making little pieces, and you don't make them right away. They are constantly lighting the sets. So what a typical situation on Batman was a script, which would be a 30-minute show, was about 35 pages long. The script, the written script. We would be lucky if we did 3 pages in one day. Okay? And when you think about it, the way they work is they sit there, they have a crew, a huge crew of people. So many people say, what are all these people doing? Well, there are people that are lighting the set, there's camera people, there's assistant people, there's people that pull the cables, there's just a ton of people that do all these different things. But when we actually go to film, you wait. I mean, these people actually do the lighting and everything for about 45 minutes, and then you work for 30 seconds. Think about that. Then you wait another 45 minutes, and you work for maybe a minute. So you can see how it's very hard to keep the energy up, because you're, you know, the most famous saying in show business is, hurry up and wait, because you're always waiting. But it's still a lot of fun to do it, and there were some great things, climbing up the walls, fighting villains. You know, I love the fight scenes. And working with Adam was a lot of fun too. He's a very, very nice man, and he wishes he could be here today. Okay, thank you.
Bert, I know you've told me in the past, but how many other kids tried out for the part of Robin?
There was, that I know of, at least 1,100 people that tried out for the role. They had done a national search, and what happened was when they picked me, they said, would you like to know why we selected you to play Robin? I said, yeah. I said, and they told me that 1,100 people had been interviewed, and I was really stunned to hear that many. And they said, well, the reason why we selected you to play Robin was because in our minds, if there really was a Robin, really, not an actor, but really, that you personally would be it. Because we just feel that you are exactly what our vision is. So, we don't want you to, quote, act. We really just want you to be yourself and be enthusiastic. And that's what I did. And I go out and I make appearances, and people will say, gee, you sound like yourself. Well, yeah, I guess so. All right? Thank you. Good question.
Hi. So, as you said, the 60s were a slightly more conservative time, and since then, you've had 50 million different incarnations of Batman, I think that's the word, including the latest trailer, which has been really criticized for being too dark and gritty. Hearing that, how do you feel about superheroes right now? Do you think they have to be dark to be relevant?
No, but what they do have to do is the people who make the movies, remember, it is show business, right? It's still a business. And so they have to make movies for the audience. And the audience for most movies are young teenagers, people went out on their dates, people in sometimes in their 20s, and to a lesser extent, older people. So they made the Batman movies for that darker audience. Now, I believe there's two audiences. I think there's that family audience that we play to, mom, dad, kids, all of you guys growing up. And in fact, Adam likes to say that while the movies featured the Dark Knight, that he is the bright knight. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, citizen.
There have been many different Robins over the years.
Well, it's not a mini. A few.
Anyway, so which one is your favorite Robin in the present movies? Or
No, well, there's no Robin in the present movies. But my favorite Robin is obviously myself.
That's
Do you have
only
another
Robin,
question?
guys, come on.
Okay.
Next question.
First off, I'd like to thank you for introducing me to what's still my favorite character. And
Would that be Nightwing?
yeah, but that's who you become.
We talked about that earlier.
What would you say is your favorite moment? Being Robin on the set, filming the scene, or just something you got to do?
The favorite moment? In one word, surviving. Batman was a very dangerous show to make. People don't realize that. I was almost killed so many times you wouldn't believe it. Let's just take, for example, the first day of filming in 1965, the first day on the set, the first shot of the day. It's like 7:30 in the morning, you've got a costume on, that it's hard to move in the costume, the cape pulls on your neck, the vest itches you, the tights are not terribly comfortable. I don't believe man was built for tights. And all of these things, and I get in the Batmobile in Bronson Canyon where we filmed the famous scene, driving the Batmobile out of the Batcave. And I looked over and I thought it was, first I saw Batman and I thought, oh, that's Adam. But as I looked a little closer, I said, no, that's not Adam. Who's that? And I said, who are you? And he says, my name is Huey. I said, oh, okay, and why are you dressed like Batman? He said, because I'm a stuntman. I said, oh, okay, well, wait a minute, what are you doing here? He said, well, this is a very dangerous stunt, and they hired me to do this. So, you mean this shot is very dangerous? Oh, absolutely. And I said, well, why is it dangerous? He said, well, we have to come out of the Batcave at 55 miles an hour. We have to go straight to the camera. We have to make a sharp left turn. That gate has to go down. We have to drive over it. And we have to do this without hurting anybody. And I said, oh, well, gee, that does sound a little dangerous. And he said, you know, and I don't know why he said it to me. He says, you know, stuntmen get paid very well. I said, oh, glad to hear that. He says, yeah, the more broken bones we get, the more money we make. You know, and that just somehow hit me the wrong way. So I said, well, you know, wait a minute. Before we do the shot, if Adam West has a stuntman, don't I have a stuntman? Oh yeah, you have a stuntman. I said, great, where is he? Oh, he's over having coffee with Adam West. I said, well, wait a minute, I don't understand this. So I called over the second assistant director. I said, I think there's a terrible mistake here. This man is a stuntman, he tells me this is a very dangerous shot. He said, no, he's right, it is very dangerous. I said, yes, but I have a stuntman who's over there drinking coffee with Adam West. He says, yep, that's right too. Well, I said, well, why is that? I said, why isn't he sitting in here? Oh, we can't use him. I said, you can't use him? Why can't you use him? He says, because he doesn't look like you. I said, wait a minute. You hire somebody to be my stuntman who doesn't look like me. Why would you hire him? He said, because we couldn't find anybody else. Anyway, I did the stunt. Came out, we came right at the camera at 55 miles an hour, but something bad happened. Unexpectedly, my door flew open. And the centrifugal force of making that sharp left turn started to throw me outside the door. I reached around, and I don't know, it was like pure luck. I was able to wrap my little finger on the gear shift knob, which prevented me from falling out, but it pulled my finger out of joint. And if the man sitting behind the camera was knocked over, the big arc lamp lights were not, one of them was knocked over, and it was a serious accident. And people ran over and they said, "Burt, are you okay?" I said, "I'm okay, but my hand is killing me." And it had already had swollen, just literally 30 or 40 seconds it had swollen up. They said, "Gee, Burt, we got to get you to a doctor right away." And I said, "I appreciate that." They said, "We will just as soon as we finish the shot." Well, I said, "What does that entail?" "Well, we got another 45 minutes to set up. Got to retouch up the Batmobile, got a ding on the door, we got the lighting, got to check the camera." That was at 7:30 in the morning, and I didn't get to the doctor's until noon. And that was the first of 5 days in a row from explosions, cars blowing up that weren't supposed to. I'll tell you one more quick one. You remember the first show with Jill St. John with the Riddler, Frank Gorshin, where Batman is going to try to save me and he blows a hole in the subway and rushes in to rescue me and I'm tied down on a table? Do any of you remember that scene? Well, it's very true. I was tied down on a table. They were supposed to build what's called a breakaway set. That means that they build it with very light materials like balsa wood, so they can put a very small charge and it looks like it's blowing, you know, a hole in the side of the subway building. Well, unfortunately, the people that built the set forgot to build a breakaway set. In other words, they built it out of 2x4s, the same thing you would build your house out of. And there was no time to saw things and try to make it look like a breakaway set. So you know what they did, the special effects people? They used 2 half sticks of dynamite and they nearly blew the entire soundstage down, okay? And you know, I was tied down and I remember a 2x4, this big board, came down, hit me right on the nose, broke my nose, couldn't do anything about it, you know? So those are the kinds of things that happen. They don't happen so much anymore, but so survival was the answer. That was my greatest. And by the way, after that happened, the first week, they took out a $3 million life insurance policy on me. I was a little queasy about that, but what really bothered me was the last 2 shows that we made. I could swear they were trying to collect on that insurance policy. All right? Thank you.
You guys having fun? You want to keep going? Take a few more? Yeah, all right.
Awesome.
Do you wish that you had more vehicles than Batman?
Sorry, say it again?
Do you wish you had more than just a bike, like more vehicles to ride on?
More vehicles.
Oh, do you wish you had more vehicles?
Well, let's see. What did we have? We had, of course, the Batmobile. You remember the Bat Cycle with the go-kart? You remember that?
He was saying more vehicles that you had. Like you had the bike. Batman had the Batmobile, the Bat.
No, but I had the sidecar. Remember that? Well, I remember that because when we were filming that on the pier in Santa Barbara, California, there was a little accident. Well, Batman was driving the cycle. I came off in that little Bat go-kart, but it was very hard to steer. And I turned the steering wheel, it didn't seem to go right, and I ended up going off the end of the pier into the ocean, wearing that costume. And it's very hard to swim when you've got costumes that are full of water. So we had that, we had the Bat boat. Remember the Bat boat? Did you see our Batman movie? I rode in the Bat boat again with a stuntman. Okay? The same stuntman. And what happened, we were going 45 miles an hour on the ocean. Okay? And we had a camera boat in front of us. And what happened is, when the camera boat would turn, you know, they create, like, you know, grooves in the water, so to speak. And I actually went underwater at 45 minutes. It turned on the side, And I swear I was going to kill that. If I survived, I was going to kill that Batman stuntman. But it was very scary stuff doing this, you know? Okay? Thank you. Who's next?
What wanted you to actually like play Robin?
Huh?
What wanted you to play Robin?
What made me want to play Robin? I thought it'd be fun. When I was a kid, I read Superman comic books. Where I lived, they didn't have a Batman comic book, but they had Superman. And I wanted to be Superboy. And I actually have photos taken when I was like 3 years old on a little tricycle that my mother had taken a bath towel and a clothesline clip, you know, and had held my cape on. And I thought about it all the time. I actually believe that somehow helped me get that role. Okay?
Thank you.
We got time for one more?
Anybody else? All right, here, let's get these other questions.
One more?
I was wondering, I really like the holy whatever Batman. It's become part of my daily vocabulary. But I was wondering if there was a line or a moment where it was hard to keep a straight face while filming.
Constantly hard to keep a straight face, especially when you have a person who is playing Batman that when you look up close, you see he's cross-eyed in the mask. And we had some tough lines on Batman. Did you know that? There were some tongue twisters. There was one line where I said to Batman, "Haven't you some anti-ballistic bat flax in your utility belt, Batman?" Try to say that. That's tough. You know? And then Adam, of course, Adam West, who played Batman, he's a very nice man and a very funny man, but he has a certain style. And a lot of actors actually have a difficult time with that because his characterization of Batman is very stoic, very grand, and he emphasizes some words. So when you have to answer him, you know, you're like this, not, you know. He also, Adam and I played a lot of practical jokes on each other, okay? And I don't know why, I guess because we're in the costumes 14, 15 hours a day. It's like, you know, by the end of the day, you're so blurry-eyed. But we had a lot of fun doing it, and he was fun to work with. Okay? Thank you.
So from here, guys, we're going to go back to the autograph table. If we didn't get a chance to get to your question, come on over and come see Burt, shake hands, take a picture, get an autograph. We're there for about another hour today. Tomorrow, about 11 to 2. Bert's got a flight back to Gotham City he's got to catch. But why don't we make some noise for the classic boy, Robin?